Okay, Valerie, let's take a look at your essay, starting with the intro. The intro is pretty good for what we have so far. There's a few things that I want to point out with your intro, though. First, mercy killings are a controversial issue in the community. Not the greatest hook to get the readers engaged, and also community is a little bit vague. What community are you referencing? Uh, just kind of where exactly it's controversial is a little unclear in here. So I feel there's a way that you can start this off a little bit more effectively, and just think of a few different ways you could do that. And then moving on, many people argue over the fact that mercy killings are ethical or unethical. All this is pretty good, and then we get to here. This is a reference to a Mice and Men, Time Magazine, and Dr. Jack Kevorkian article. A couple grammar things. You might want to say a Time Magazine article and a Dr. Jack Kevorkian article, because there's a lot of Dr. Jack Kevorkian articles, so just saying a Kevorkian article is fine. But mostly my concern with is how you phrase it here. This is a reference to, because your previous sentence defines mercy killing, which is okay, and then you say, oh, this definition is a reference to, which isn't quite the verbiage you need. What you should say instead is something along the lines of an example of mercy killings, or mercy killings are looked at in Of Mice and Men, Time Magazine, in a Kevorkian article. That would be fine. With your thesis is okay. One of the things is you're slipping into that first person, in my opinion. Whoops. My opinion. You need to get rid of that. Just straight out say mercy killings are ethical because, and then because it's the patient's choice, that needs an apostrophe. This should be, well, you would actually need the apostrophe after S because you're implying that it's up to patients. So that itself needs to be plural. So not plural, possessive. So this being the plural form, you need the possessive after the S. And then this is another way you could talk about, instead of saying Roswell did not want to see his wife suffering, you need to make this a little bit more specific. So say something along the lines of, it prevents people from suffering, or whatever it is. So your thesis would be a lot more effective given that you get rid of this first person and you clear this up a little bit. Okay, so looking at your body paragraph, and you actually have some really good analysis. So if it's the patient wishes, it should be allowed. Only went through this. They have the rights. This all here is some pretty good analysis. It looks pretty long just because you have this one quote. So I think you could add a little bit more here. So don't feel restricted to just having these few bits of sentences. You can make this paragraph a little bit longer. But this is pretty good analysis and what I'm looking for. But there are two concerns I have with this. So first, Dr. Jack Kevorkian, blah, 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 you introduce him, which is good. This is really good for you to introduce him. And a lot of times we overlook that, but this really explains it well. The problem is, you're saying Kevorkian stated that he required patients to express clearly. This is actually from the author of the article whose name I'm trying to blank on right now. So that is what Keith Schneider is saying. So if we look at medical pathologists, let me type this into my search bar. So Dr. Jack Kevorkian, medical pathologist, blah, blah, blah. This is from Schneider, so it's not Kevorkian saying that. You can say that this is from Schneider, or just say Kevorkian required patients to express clearly a wish to die, and then just put the quotation marks there. And the other thing, where was it? Went through the machine. I'm not sure what you're referencing for machine. There's a couple different ways I think you mean this, but I don't think this is the right word choice. Because it wasn't quite a machine. Well, machines were involved. But I just think about the word machine, because the way it is right now, I think the word choice could be improved a little bit. But overall, this is a pretty good paragraph with some good analysis. You have an example there, but I would like to see a little bit more because I know you are definitely capable of producing some really good essays and writing given what I've seen before. So I think if you extend this, your writing will become even better because you're adding more substance to it. And then the only other thing is you have some awkward spacing there. Okay, so moving to your second paragraph, this is what I mean with the thesis. So you're talking about who Roswell is, but you will need to explain who Roswell is. So you can just add something in the middle with brackets. So Roswell, um, and you would do brackets because you're using it as a quote, husband of a wife who is suffering from an ailment. That will clear up who Roswell is. You just need to introduce what is going there. But the reason I said if we go back to your thesis, make this in general about suffering because you don't want to put your specific examples in your thesis. You want to put that in your body paragraph. But again, you have some good evidence with some good analysis, and I will talk about that in a second. So Roswell would not allow her to continue life as a suffering animal, so he committed what is called mercy killing. What you want to do is you want to clarify who her is, and again, you can do that. This is how we do it if you're using a quote. So you can say his wife in brackets, and you can do it that way. So that way it clears up for the reader who that her is referring to. So that is a way you can do that. And I'm going to delete that so you don't see that before the video. And why is that deleted? Okay, let me just write a comment. Ignore this. Okay. Sorry that you're going to get an email on that probably. Okay, so this is actually a pretty hard skill to do, so I am impressed with this. So most people would rather die than live with a terminal illness that makes you suffer. This is actually a pretty good analysis, but what you do is you use this quote from Of Mice and Men as part of your analysis. And that is pretty difficult to do if you really think about it because we think of analysis as not using evidence, but because you have this connection between literature and an actual real life example, that's why it works as analysis. So when I talk in class about ways about how using the book isn't necessarily a way to do analysis, that's because it is such a hard skill that takes time to do, but because you use this previous example, that is why this is such a great analysis. So that works really well there. Okay, so moving on to your opposition, your topic sentence is really good. And this is the length that I think you are capable of for your other paragraphs as well. Just so you know. So you have some pretty good evidence in here. I think you could take a little bit more time to talk about why your position is right. So let's see. From here, this is fine. If it's true, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, just going through this real quick. So you have some good examples that show the oppositions, but you have this break in here between quotes, and all your analysis comes down mostly towards the end of the paragraph. You should shift some kind of analysis after this first quote. You do have this as you're understanding why people see this perspective. And let me tell you, I have a lot of people who are using sentences like this that is pretty hypothetical. And I want to commend you on this because a lot of people are saying, oh, we can see a lot of murder in the world, but they don't have the evidence to back this up, or they're not using it. So the fact that you're incorporating this quote, especially as your opposition, is really, really good because you're demonstrating to people that there are quotes to back this up beyond the hypothetical from the articles. But anyways, I digress. Add some analysis after that. And again, we slip into the first person here that you should get rid of. And then get rid of the slash, make it him or her, or you can use the singular them. I know in English, a lot of people are like, oh, them has to be plural. No, that's crap. It can be a singular. And we use the singular they in so many times, and it's becoming more prominent in academic writing. So that is fine if you use the word pronoun them. Format issue, I don't expect you all to know this, but technically these two quotation marks should be together. And then you don't need this in the Dr. Jack Kevorkian article because this becomes a little bit redundant because you've already introduced this quote. And then I see you have a little bit of a spacing space spacing issue there. But you do have some good analysis there. Just get away from that first person and then just really emphasize in the article about how Kevorkian really allowed them to have their independence and autonomy to make those decisions. But overall, your opposition paragraph is pretty good. I think you could rearrange the analysis a little bit and put some more into it, but this is a pretty good start with it. Okay, now we are at your conclusion. So, the ending. There is no doubt that the original intent or motive is good. They have the intention to alleviate the suffering of the unfortunate person. This is such good wording that makes it really powerful to end with it. And then you restate your thesis here and talk about it's okay in the conclusion that you reference Roswell as this because you've already mentioned it. Didn't want to see his wife suffering. The only thing, this is where you kind of are contradicting yourself. It's not right when someone murders a person, just like Roswell shot his wife in the head. But when there's nothing to do and the family think that should be things. It is better taking the person away. It should be done. That is, if the patient is unable to make his or her, get rid of that slash, or them, or their, sorry, it would be there in that case, decision. Otherwise, the patient should decide. So, I understand what you're getting with here. The reason that this is counterintuitive to what you said is because you used Roswell as a story to emphasize that this choice should be there. So I think you just need to reword this a little bit and maybe just say something like, people like Roswell need this option because people, and whatever you want to say with it. Because you have some great examples and analysis here in your conclusion and a great way to wrap it up. But you do have, I mean, let's be honest, this is a run-on. But also if you just clear this up, then get rid of the murder because it's fine if you address it in a certain way, but because you started with that, you really just want to focus on how that right should be given to them because that is the way that you are attributing it. But overall, great essay. I think the two biggest things, there are a few grammar things, but pay attention to where you're using that first person and look at times where you can add some more writing and rearrange your analysis a little bit.